Great, thanks. Um, so it's all set?
It's all good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in this morning. I'm really excited to finally be able to share this project with you. So we're going to be talking today about the interview project that I conducted over the course of the summer, which we're calling The Value of Understanding ACEs, the Impact of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Curriculum Training. Which I carried out along with the help of another intern at MCCC, Kurel Nakamura, who is also on the call today. So just to start by talking a little bit about how I got connected with MCCC, I'm going to be a junior at Macalester College in St. Paul in the fall, and I'm part of a program there called the Chuck Green Civic Engagement Fellowship, which allows students at Macalester to be funded to work with a community organization in St. Paul carrying out some sort of community development project over the summer. And this is a picture of me here with the 2016 cohort. And Chuck Green gives you a lot of autonomy in deciding what kind of organization you want to work with, sort of what issue area you want to work in. We have people working in education, art, clean energy, food access, just a very wide range of issues. And I was reflecting about what was going to be most meaningful for me to work on this summer, and luckily that led me to the best partner organization ever, Minnesota Communities Caring for Children. And the reason I got involved with MCCC is because I knew that I really wanted to work with an organization doing work related to adverse childhood experiences. And the reason for that goes back to my family. So I'm from the city of Chicago, and my mom, for the past 2 years now, pictured here, has been doing a lot of outreach and education about ACEs in Chicago. And hearing her talk about her work and how passionate she was about it really inspired me to look into where in the Twin Cities organizations were doing that same work. So I got in contact with MCCC and was really excited to hear about their ACE Interface program, where they train and certify people to present on the ACE Interface curriculum, really in an effort to raise awareness about ACEs and begin inspiring communities to start organizing around how to mitigate ACEs, how to build resilience. So when I talked to MCCC, I asked them what sort of project would be most useful to support their work related to ACEs, and they told me that they had a lot of anecdotal evidence that learning about ACEs was having a major effect on their trainers and presenters and on their communities, but they hadn't really done anything to measure or record that impact. And that was something they would be interested in having me do. And we decided the most effective way to do that would be to interview people who went through the ACE Interface curriculum training, really focusing on three main questions. What is the value for presenters of the ACE Interface curriculum? How are they using this information in their personal and professional lives? And what change are they seeing in their communities as a result of this work? So over the course of 6 weeks, from late May to the end of June, I was able to conduct 29 interviews with members of MCCC's ACE Interface Presenter Network. And these interviews happened both in person and on the phone, and during the interviews I would take notes, which Kurel and I later analyzed to begin to understand the key themes that were really coming out for presenters around this work. So just to talk a little bit about who the interview participants were that I was able to talk to during that time, at this point MCCC has trained 130 people in the ACE Interface curriculum, and 56 of the people they've trained are certified to present. Of the people I interviewed, 72% were certified as opposed to 32% overall. 70% were from the trainer cohort and the first presenter cohort, so people trained about 2 years ago or so, as opposed to 42% of the presenter population overall is from those cohorts. And then 62% of the people I talked to were from the metro area, as opposed to 47% overall. So overwhelmingly, people were certified, trained 2 or more years ago, and from the metro area. And even as I started to carry out these interviews, I was already incredibly struck by the amazing stories people were sharing with me about their experiences with this curriculum and the effects they were already seeing it have on the people they were sharing it with. So Corel is going to share a couple of those stories with you now. You'll see all the text on the screen, but she'll be reading it, so you don't feel the need to read it. Corel?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The first time I ever presented, it was a short presentation and the information was new to the audience. When we shared the ACE questionnaire, a woman was triggered and had to step out of the room. She returned and at the end of the presentation expressed that she was grateful to have heard the information. I saw her again later and she told me that she had shared the information with her family and the whole family wanted to do better and raise their kids differently. The presentation led to a behavior change for this family and that was very validating as a presenter.
Thanks. Oh.
And Becky will be reading the next one.
I saw a crying woman at my favorite coffee shop, and I asked her how she was. She came and sat down with me and told me that there were bad things happening with her kids and with her boyfriend. Her relationship was falling apart. It became an ACEs dialogue, and I found myself diagramming the ACEs pyramid. I meant to get my own work done and get away from the office for a bit, but she ended up staying for 2 hours. At the end, I told her, I don't know you, but if you want to talk, here's my card.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, just having a little trouble here. Okay, so besides collecting those stories, we also were able to come up with many other results from the interviews. And from analyzing the notes, Corel and I found 7 key findings that were themes throughout many of the interviews that were mentioned many times within interviews and across interviews as well. So as I share with you these findings, I'll read the finding and then Corel and Becky will share with you a couple quotes from the interview participants related to these findings so you can really hear the voices of the participants in this and sort of see what we were capturing through these interviews. Keep clicking the wrong arrow. Okay. So first, participants have a better understanding of themselves, their families, and their communities.
It's made me a more understanding person because I'm more understanding of where people are coming from.
I understand better where I come from, why I show up the way I do, why I respond the way I do, and how I can control the way I respond instead of being off-center sometimes.
Communities are hungry for this information. So participants found that one presentation will often lead to another as the information spreads, and their audiences are very responsive to the presentations.
When people become aware, they're transformed in how they look at families and the people they're working with.
People hear about it, and it spreads.
Participants' audiences and communities are engaged in discovering what to do to prevent ACEs and build resilience. So really thinking about that what's next piece.
I talk about being trauma-informed as an individual, agency, or organization. How do you respond to individuals?
I'm having a lot more conversations about social-emotional learning, restorative practices, and what we can do to make schools more safe, nurturing, and engaging for students. People are interested in becoming trainers, bringing the information to schools, principals, parents, and students.
Participants connect ACEs to their own work and are eager to introduce this work into other fields.
A lot of times in my field of social work, we treat at the top level. ACEs gets you down about 10 levels and allows for more effective treatment.
I'm going to present to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council that's considering whether or not to build a new jail.
Participants recognize the importance of talking about historical trauma in relation to ACEs.
The original study was very narrow culturally. There needs to be additional information to couple with the original study that incorporates communities of color.
I would not know what historical trauma was and have had the opportunity to have conversations with people from many different backgrounds.
Participants are sharing the curriculum wherever they can. So that might be with their families to help create healing, or might be with friends at church or in their workplace to support their coworkers.
My mom was physically and emotionally abusive. I started having conversations with her around ACEs and their impacts, and she started to share things with me that had happened to her with her mom that she had never shared with anyone before, not even my dad. She started to cry and feel guilty. I've helped her to understand that these are intergenerational struggles.
I tell my coworkers that it isn't okay and empower them to say they're having a hard time and need to step away. They are now better able to recognize when they're getting triggered, ask for support, and support each other.
Finally, the ideas of the curriculum aren't new for communities. Overwhelmingly, people already knew that adversity that happens in childhood affects you in adulthood. But the curriculum provides a really important tool to articulate these ideas and really bring these issues to the forefront for communities.
It gave recognition that even if they're hearing about ACEs for the first time, they have been working with them for years.
This added more tools to my toolbox and gave me another way to talk about stress or trauma.
Great. Thank you so much. So there's a report which I believe I sent to all of you that has all of these findings broken down even more with more quotes from interview participants about under each of the themes. But we also wanted to find another way to share this information and really highlight some of the more specific efforts that participants are involved in related to ACEs. So we created this map, and it's sort of a quasi-ripple effect map where you can see in the center of the map is the ACE interface curriculum training, and then all of this action explodes out from there. So the map is organized by different questions, and the first one that I'd like to talk about is what are presenters doing? So of course they're presenting on the curriculum, but they're also doing many other things as well. They're applying for Bush fellowships to learn more about neurobiology, brain development, the effect of historical trauma on communities. They're creating community cohorts and collaboratives in places like Brainerd, White Earth, and Fond du Lac. Excuse me. They're healing from past traumas alongside their families, finding ACE-conscious alternatives to suspension, employing greater compassion in their work with others, training foster parents to be trauma-informed. Many presenters, too, mentioned screening paper tigers for their community. So doing all sorts of initiatives that are not exactly presenting on this curriculum, but are still really closely related to the information about adverse childhood experiences. Next, I want to highlight another section of the map, so what organizations are presenters connecting with. And there's a list here of about 30 organizations separated by different regions in Minnesota, which is by no means a comprehensive list of all the places where our presenters have connected or given this presentation. But they're ones that were mentioned, came out during the interviews. And I'd like to draw your attention today to the northwest region of the state. First, to the Red River Valley Juvenile Center, where one of the members of our network connected. It's a residential placement and detention center for youth in Crookston, Minnesota, and they are now giving the ACE questionnaire to the youth that they have staying there and implementing a nurtured heart approach, which is a strengths-based approach focused on fostering healthy relationships. So really trying to gain a better understanding of the youth they're working with, and then to have a more compassionate approach to address some of the things they're hearing about the backgrounds of these youth. Also, another organization to highlight, Peacemaker Resources. We have a couple members of our network who work at that organization, and Peacemaker Resources works to have social emotional learning taught in schools, and in their efforts to get a social emotional learning curriculum incorporated, into classrooms, they included the ACE information as sort of this evidence of the importance of social emotional learning. And it really did strengthen their argument, and they were able to get social emotional learning taught in all kindergarten center classrooms in the Bemidji school system, which is really incredible. Next, what changes are presenters seeing in their workplaces and in the systems in which they work? So they're seeing their communities engage around historical trauma. They're seeing the question shifting from what's wrong with you to what happened to you in their own work and in their coworkers' work as well. They're seeing schools incorporate social emotional learning. I just touched on that a bit. Institutions are seeking to become more trauma-informed and are really interested in strategies for how to do that. And presentations generate interest in more presentations, as I mentioned earlier. Finally, what are presenters learning? What are their key takeaways from being trained in this curriculum? Well, some key takeaways that participants highlighted were the effects of toxic stress on the brain, strategies for resilience, the importance of healthy brain development, and the existence of intergenerational cycles of trauma. So this map only captures some of the ripples that are beginning to happen in Minnesota communities as a result of this work, but sort of a visual way to take in how much our network is really doing. So in conclusion, the profound effects of the ACE interface curriculum are rippling out through Minnesota communities. MCCC's anecdotal evidence was supported by the results of the interviews. This information is having a huge effect on both members of our network and the communities around them. So we'd like to end by sharing a short video with you of members of our presenter network talking a bit about their experiences with this curriculum.
From Minnesota Communities Caring for Children.
For the past 10 years, Minnesota Communities Caring for Children has been sharing new scientific discoveries around adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, brain science, and resilience across the state. The ACE study shows that adversity in childhood significantly increases the risk of many health and social problems across the lifespan. Understanding brain development and resilience points us to healing and interrupting cycles of trauma. We invite individuals and communities to help create that healing.
In 2013, we began enlisting diverse Minnesotans to help spread the word by certifying them to present a curriculum called Understanding Adverse Childhood Experiences, Building Self-Healing Communities. We asked some of our ACE interface presenters to talk to us about their work on ACEs. What are some new connections you've been able to make because of this work? Tell me a story of a time that you've connected with others through this work. How have you seen this work impacting people around you? What do you see as the value of this work on ACEs? They had some great answers.
Being a certified presenter has opened up doors for me.
For me personally, when I first learned about ACEs, it was like this light bulb went off in my head, and I started to understand myself and my family and the communities that I work in from a completely different lens and perspective.
I say the biggest impact was within my family, which, we see it, we can live together, a whole lot better.
I think the biggest thing for me is really giving people the tools and the ability to feel empowered about their story.
They're making connections in their communities.
So I was able to work with a ministry called Timber Bay, and they are in the state of Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin, and they work with at-risk youth. And so the other day I went to a training, about 40 people there. It was their statewide staff, and I was able to do the ACEs presentation for them, and they were all very excited about that. I told them I'd come to their local communities and work with their community leaders if they wanted to do a presentation there. One of the other presenters there heard me talk about ACEs, and it's connecting me with some people down in the cities now. Possible invitation to speak with over 600 youth pastors about ACEs and present.
And there was one gentleman in particular who shared his work with inmates in a correctional facility and their challenges with addiction. Almost everybody in the group had some trauma history, and how when they got into the treatment of addiction, it often brought them back to childhood attachment and challenges with family of origin and things like that. So it was really interesting for me to connect with him, just my background in psychology and what I do in my work.
They're using it in their own families.
I just say I love the ACEs for giving me the opportunity to share it in my family.
Within my own family, starting to have these conversations has led to, like I said, a lot of tears, but also a lot of healing. And I think a new closeness and understanding of one another that we never had before.
Knowing ACEs, I think the parent can provide inside that house a calmer environment, an environment in which the child can feel they're loved, they're welcome, they're cared for, and that they are protected. And how critical those very small gestures can build the resilience of that child, can help them lead a safer, more confident, and a more competent life.
Work on ACEs is having a big impact.
Typically, when people talk about ACEs and their own experiences, they feel a lot of shame and embarrassment and they don't want to talk about it. This has given people the opportunity to really take back their story and really feel empowered and really have the tools and the knowledge to be able to move forward in a way that they maybe couldn't before this information.
I'm really excited to see what emerges for the tribal communities that we're working in right now around ACEs, and the continued healing in my own family, and knowing that as this work moves forward, my family is not going to be the only one that's impacted, that it is going to ripple out across individual by individual, family by family, throughout the community.
What if parents have those tools that they can utilize inside their household and provide that safe space for their children? The children can survive and they can do well and be successful. And I think that's where the hope lies, that the knowledge really provides us with the tools to better care about ourselves, our children, and to care about each other and our communities. I'm hopeful.
Thank you to all of our trainers and presenters for your amazing work. Thank you to ACE Interface LLC, Laura Porter, and Dr. Rob Anda for use of your amazing curriculum. Without you, none of this would be possible.
Great. Thank you all so much. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions popping up yet. If anybody out there would let us know if you can still hear us, if that's still working, that'd be great. And if there are any questions or comments. Tom says, well, you mentioned a report.
Yes. So I wrote a report that outlines a lot of what I talked about in the presentation today, and has all the key themes with more quotes and more of a breakdown of what each of the themes means. And I know I attached it in the email with the webinar invitation. I think we'll be sending it out again in the course of the next week to the entire presenter network, or I think that was the idea. So you should definitely see that, but let me know if you did not receive it as well, because you're definitely meant to see that and be able to read through it.
Catherine says, thanks for the great work. And Lowell says, good work, Maxine, and all of the MCCC folks.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it without all of you.
Great. Well, I think, Roxy raised her hand for a second. Roxy, you're unmuted if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, in the report, is there like an executive summary? Did you do something like that? I'm thinking about the Central Minnesota Collaborative, ACES Collaborative. We're having a meeting in August, and it would be great to go over the whole presentation, but I may not have enough time.
Yes. Well, there is an executive summary. The executive summary is really just a very brief description of the project and the findings, but you'd be more than welcome to share that with that collaborative.
Thank you.
I think for the purposes of the recording of this webinar that we'll have available for others to watch as well, I'm going to take a moment to thank Maxine, especially for all her work on this. Today is her last day actually working on this project, and we're so, so grateful for her time, and also to Corel for her support on it. It's really going to be very useful to us going forward to have this information to build on. So thank you so much, Maxine. Really, really appreciate it. And I'll give you a minute if there's anything you'd like to say before I stop the recording, and then we can go back to having more conversation among us.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to the entire network for participating in this, for those of you who participated in this project, but to everyone for their amazing work related to this. And thanks to MCCC for the opportunity to do this work, and to Corel for all your help. That was awesome. Yeah. And Laura Porter and Rob Anda and ACE Interface for their curriculum, definitely.
Great. Thank you very much.